The customers don't see the human side of it at all. They hit a button on their phone and then they expect their food to just show up at their door half an hour later.
There are roughly 65,000 app-based delivery workers in New York City. Together, they make up the largest delivery workforce anywhere in the country. They're mostly immigrants, mostly undocumented, and right now they're on the front lines of a revolution in the gig economy.
While the delivery industry is booming, these workers are now struggling.
Los Deliveristas Unidos
are demanding better working conditions.
Minimum pay rate of $23.82 an hour.
First of its kind in the country.
In 2021, the Deliveristas made history when they secured a minimum wage of $24 an hour. Or at least that's what was supposed to happen.
We were supposed to be here celebrating the minimum pay, and guess what? We're not. The Adams administration has failed to meet the deadline to enact the minimum pay law.
The minimum wage was legally scheduled to go into effect by January of this year. Now it's May, and delivery workers are still waiting. So what happened? How did the tide turn against the Deliveristas? This is a story about the dark side of the gig economy, about how companies like Uber Eats, DoorDash, and Grubhub are finding cutting-edge ways to exploit the most vulnerable workers, to turn them against each other, and how against all odds, the Deliveristas are fighting back.
Oh, I'm getting an order. They tell me the pickup, the drop-off, and how much that it's worth. As you can see, it's not very much. Should I take it? My name is Joshua Wood. I deliver things on a bike. This is my work bike. It's built for all-day comfort in a space that's dominated by big, fast cars. You need something which can cut around anything to get someplace fast.
Josh Wood has been delivering for the app since 2016. That makes him something of a veteran to the industry. Josh rides a fixie, but the vast majority of delivery workers ride e-bikes like these.
As more and more people started picking up on them, times that we had to do to complete deliveries increased. So they essentially became a tool that you almost have to have. It makes the customer's experience easier because their food gets there faster, and it makes the app company's profit margins higher because more deliveries are getting done per day.
But that doesn't mean that e-bikes don't come with a cost.
From the worker's perspective, of course, it means that the investment needed to start this job, you probably have to spend about $1,500, if not more, on an e-bike.
On top of that, workers have to pay for the extra batteries, their own backpack.
You'll need a lock, winter pants, a winter jacket, rain pants, my helmet, my gloves.
They have to pay for their own health insurance too. That's assuming they can afford health insurance.
Most of us don't have health care.
All of these costs really start to add up. But why do they fall exclusively on delivery workers? The answer is pretty simple. They're not really workers. Not in the traditional sense, anyway. Josh Wood is an independent contractor. That means he's responsible for virtually all of the costs of delivery, and his boss doesn't have the same responsibilities as a normal boss.
So this is the heart of the model, because what this means is DoorDash then is not responsible for paying a minimum wage.
That's Andrew Wolf. He's an expert on the gig economy, and he co-authored the first major survey of delivery workers in New York City.
Taking into account costs, we found in our survey that app-based food delivery couriers made on average $12.21 an hour.
The city estimates that number is even lower, about $11 an hour with tips, well below the minimum wage of $15 an hour. But it wasn't always this way.
Before these apps came around, delivery in places like New York City was done through the restaurants. So a restaurant would hire a delivery worker. The restaurants was required to pay them a minimum wage. They were also required to buy them safety equipment, provide the bicycle itself. It's just a massive shift of all the costs, which are quite considerable, onto the workers themselves.
One of the biggest costs is theft. It affects over half of delivery workers, who are often robbed at gunpoint. Luckily for Nazmul Hussain, he wasn't around when it happened.
না না আমার 2-4 দিন আগে আমার বাইকটা চুরি হয়ে গেছে আমি সেম জায়গাতে আমি আমার বাইকটা রাখছি এখান থেকে চুরি হয়ে গেছে তো আমার এখন এটা হচ্ছে আমার ফ্রেন্ডের বাইক সে রাখছে আর কি আপাতত এখানে
Nazmul is an immigrant from Bangladesh, and he lives with 7 other delivery workers in a 4-bedroom apartment.
এখন আগে একসময় ফাটানো যেত, এখন কিন্তু বাংলাদেশে ফাটানো যাইতেছে। এখন আগের থেকে ইনকাম একদম কমে গেছে। এখন মনে করেন পর্যাপ্ত পরিমাণ নিজে যদি ভালো না থাকতে পারি, আমি বাংলাদেশে কিভাবে ফাটাবো?
7 দিন কাজ করি, আমি যে একটা কোম্পানি থেকে 164 টাকা কাজ করি, তাহলে আমার কিভাবে আমরা চলবো? আমাদের খাওয়া খরচ, আমাদের বাসা ভাড়া, আমাদের মোবাইল বিল সব মিলে আমার দেশে ছেলে মেয়ে বাল বাচ্চা আছে। আমরা তো খুবই অবস্থা খারাপ যাচ্ছে। এই যে পুরা সপ্তাহে আমার 164 টাকার ইনকাম হয়েছে।
With wages this low, there's pressure to do more deliveries at a faster pace, and that's partly why delivery workers face the highest injury rates of any industry in the city. For Nazmul, that connection is personal.
আমার একটা বাগিনা এখানে ডেলিভারি কাজ করার সময় যায়, সে অ্যাক্সিডেন্টে মারা যায়। এই হলো তার কাজেস, আর তার বড় ভাই সে এখানে থাকে। তার বড় ভাই দুজনে আমার বাগিনা। তার শেষ নিঃশ্বাস হয়ে গেছে সে ডেলিভারি পর্যায়ে।
After his nephew died, delivery workers and the community came together to support Nazmul, raising money to send his nephew's body back to Bangladesh. For years, delivery workers were forced to rely on each other just like this, while the city allowed the app companies to profit off of their cheap labor. But in 2020, things began to change. What started as a group chat among indigenous Central American workers in the Upper West Side grew into a full-fledged movement with demands to regulate the industry that exploits them. Their biggest demand? Establishing a minimum wage.
So New York City said, we're going to make sure that everybody at least earns a minimum wage rate of pay after their various expenses that they have.
That's Brad Lander, the comptroller of New York City. In 2021, he was the lead sponsor of the minimum wage law that passed the city council.
And so we said by January 1st, 2023, the city's Department of Consumer and Worker Protection needs to do the study, promulgate the rule, implement the law, so workers are earning at least a minimum rate of pay as of January 1st, 2023.
All of that went basically as planned. The city did an extensive study, and it concluded by recommending a minimum wage of $23.82 an hour, which would begin to be phased in by January of this year. And then it didn't happen.
We have been caught off guard by the city's willingness to simply blow past the deadline and ignore the law.
Under Mayor Eric Adams' watch, January 1st came and went, without the minimum wage rule going into effect. And since that time, the rule has been mysteriously modified. New provisions were added, provisions that are much more friendly to companies like DoorDash and Uber Eats.
DCWP is already allowing the apps to steal the wages that workers are supposed to be being paid right now, and moreover, even when it goes into effect, it's going to be $3 less than it would before. Companies have done two nefarious things here. One is just direct, straight-up lobbying of City Hall and DCWP. They've got lots and lots of lobbyists. And then they've also run this campaign of fear at their own workers.
In the days before the hearing, workers received push notifications from the companies, encouraging them to testify against raising their own wage, threatening that it would, quote, make conditions far worse and negatively impact flexibility.
The apps have been doing their misinformation campaign, and that seems to be hitting people because that's the only information that they're getting.
Las compañías tienen que ser un poco más justas, pero no pedir salarios exorbitantes. Yo estoy de acuerdo de que sí, haya mejores pagos para los compañeros, que haga mejores pagos.
There is a lack of trust on whether this is going to really happen because it was supposed to be delivered on January. It keeps being delayed. So people are questioning, like, was it worth it fighting?
That's Lichia Gualpa. She's an organizer who helped delivery workers fight for the minimum wage rule back in 2021.
And I don't blame them. It's like we're trying to set a standards for industry that doesn't exist yet. We're trying to set a minimum wage, so a lot of these deliveristas have never experienced what a minimum wage would look like.
So what's next for the deliveristas? The road ahead is uncertain, but the fact that they've gotten this far is itself pretty remarkable.
We have not seen this kind of gig worker delivery organizing in the United States on this level. A workforce that is primarily immigrant, coming together and organizing and winning the right to a minimum wage. The only way we're going to see change in the gig economy is if there is worker organizing.
And so, as the Deliveristas work to finish what they started, to move forward in this fight for fair pay and dignity on the job, they might have to look back.
The energy back then was very hopeful. Nothing had really been done before to get delivery workers together.
Que gracias a todos los trabajadores que estamos en las calles, ellos se han hecho multimillonarios, que al final del día, si no estamos unidos nosotros los trabajadores, la compañía no va a venir a recompensarnos.
এখানে আমাদের মনে হয় ওরকমই মনে হয় আমাদের ডেলিভারি ওয়ার্কারদের সাথে যখন কাজ করি তখন আমার মনে হয় আমরা একটা পরিবারের সাথে আছি